Hello and welcome to the Innovation Women Speak webinar series. My name is Bobby Carlton. I'm the founder of Innovation Women. Innovation Women is a visibility bureau for entrepreneurial, technical, and professional women. Our mission is to eliminate the all-male, all-pale, and often all-stale panels you see so often at industry conferences and events. We connect women with speaking opportunities, and we connect event managers with awesome speakers who just happen to be women. Innovation Women is so much more than a traditional speakers bureau. Event managers can search the database for free. Speakers pay just $100 a year to become a member. They get a profile on the platform and access to lists of speaking opportunities, as well as a number of other cool benefits. As a speaker on our site, you can see how often your profile is visited. Speakers also notify us to promote their speaking engagements, and event managers can easily create and store lists of speakers on the platform as they build out their events. If you'd like more information on Innovation Women, check out our website. For our webinar attendees, we have a special offer of 20% off your first year. It's like coffee money. You probably spend more visiting Starbucks. And before we move on, let's look at what's coming up on our schedule. Our webinar series has a new theme every month. October's theme is cybersecurity. All of our webinar speakers are Innovation Women members. If you're interested in applying to be one of our webinar speakers, we post the call for speakers on our own platform. If you're already a member, keep an eye out for these opportunities on the site and in your weekly speaker exclusive newsletter. Before we get started with today's presentation, I encourage you all to sign up for our next webinar. On September 25th, Suzanne Evans will be presenting your virtual stage challenge, creating and mastering a talk that converts. You'll learn how to create an offer that people are excited to buy, how to score speaking gigs that are the right fit for you, and how to gain great income from boosting your sales from the stage. You can register for this webinar in the Attachments tab. And speaking of that Attachments tab, this is an annotated version of your screen. Below the video viewing window, there are tabs. The default tab is Ask a Question. You can type in a question or a comment at any time during the program. The Attachments or Links tab is where you'll see documents and links from today's speaker, and the link to sign up for the next webinar. You can download the attachments at any time during this webinar and from the recording. The tab called Rate This helps us determine what you like. We read all the feedback. The Polls or Vote tab is where you'll see polls from our speaker. She'll be asking you a question later on, and you can answer it right in the screen. You can enlarge your screen to view it in full screen mode, and if at any time you need audio help, please feel free to click on the Help button at the bottom of the screen. This is also true if your screen freezes. Please try refreshing your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded, so if you'd like to view it again, you will be able to. We will send you the link after the webinar. And so now on to today's presentation. With us today is Tess Gadwa. Tess is Director of Giving Map. She is also the founder and product architect at Lotus.fm, a music and data visualization startup. She's a results-oriented project manager, well-versed in leading-edge technologies, including augmented reality, cryptocurrency, and computer vision. She's a veteran of successful startups Tripod and Blue Ridge Analytic. Her gift is finding practical applications for complex technical concepts. For those listening, please note you can ask a question at any time, and this webinar is being recorded for future playback at your convenience. Tess, we are so excited to have you here today. I will turn things over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for the great intro. I'm going to just really tell you a little bit about what this presentation is about and a little bit more about my background and I guess why you should be interested. Actionable data for social change. What is actionable data? What does that term mean? It's a new term. It's one that I coined myself. And really, we're coming at this question from a user experience perspective, in other words, UX. I have, like a lot of founders, I have worn many hats over the years. I have a technical background. I also do some programming. I do project management, as was mentioned earlier. I have to do some marketing. But really my first love is user experience and interaction design, and particularly kind of getting into the weeds and kind of not just doing the same old, but looking at what tools and technologies are out there and how they can be applied in a new way. So about 2 years ago, I really started to get interested in data visualization and kind of look at how it could be applied to some real-world business problems. The original problem we were looking at was content discovery, and then COVID-19 happened, and everything changed, and our own focus changed. So in a lot of ways, I want to apologize to anybody who is a UX professional. My original format for this talk was to go more into just the specifics of how you would design and apply design thinking to this problem. I decided to take a step back and just really kind of emphasize the business and organizational goals and why you would want to apply actionable data. So this is just to emphasize this is a talk, I hope, for anyone, but especially for decision makers, for executive directors, for C-level executives, or any kind of entrepreneur, anybody who may have data or access to a data set and want to look for ways to maximize the impact of that data. That's really what actionable data is all about. And we'll kind of continue to unpack that concept as we go forward. And we'll be spending a lot of time towards the end of the presentation talking about our current project, which is the Giving Map. What the Giving Map is an interactive map for COVID-19 relief, which lets you see in real time the areas of the country which have been hardest hit by the pandemic in terms of numbers of cases relative to the county population. And it lets you give in any of 10 giving categories and respond to that need. And again, we'll come back to this and go into more depth, and I'll give you a walkthrough of the app. But I just want to say the reason for this talk, we've had a phenomenal response. Even though we are brand new, we don't have any name recognition to speak of. It's a brand new website, a brand new brand name. We got over 20,000 unique visitors in our first 6 weeks. We've been running campaigns on social media, and on average, about 1 out of every 14, 1 out of every 15 people clicks through. If you've ever tried to do any online marketing or market a new app, you know just how unusual that type of getting response rate that's between 7 and 10%. That usually doesn't happen right off the bat. No major media coverage. People just seem to really respond to how we describe this, which is give where it matters most. That seems to strike a chord. And it's not just people coming to the site. They then go on to interact with the web app And from the time that they're putting in, which on average is over 2 minutes, we know that they're really going in and using it and checking out the content and poking around and also taking action. We've gotten good response from our survey. Somebody called the map a godsend. That's always a nice compliment. We don't try to play God, but we like to believe that we are offering useful tools, again, for people who have to make decisions and need to know more of what's happening. So again, this is a lot of horn tooting. I'm putting this out in front just because I want people to know that based on our early feedback for this paradigm, this methodology and tool set for design, it works and it produces results that are noticeable. Actionable data is more than a buzzword. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit more about the problem that it's designed to solve. And this is where I guess I go more into a design thinking kind of mindset, which is all about just having empathy and really defining the problem. And that problem that I think all of us are familiar with is TMI, too much information. We are living in the age of information. We are inundated with digital information from every side, and we have too much of it. We don't know what to do with all of it. These are just some of the many graphs and charts which show death rates and data about who is getting COVID-19, where coronavirus death rates and infections are highest. We're surrounded by this stuff, and very quickly we reach a state of overload. You'll hear people say things like, I don't watch the news anymore, just because emotionally they can't. They don't want to. There's just too much triggering content out there. Another example, a headline like U.S. unemployment being the worst since Depression, that's data, that's informative, but it doesn't necessarily leave you with a lot of good options. All this bad news, I'm based in Portland, Oregon, so of course this week there have been forest fires. You'll hear more about that later. Many of us just feel like we're in a situation where the more we know, the worse it gets. And again, this is an infographic from last summer, actually, which I found really powerful. Those were the forest fires actually happening in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. Not only is this a shocking view, this is the fires visible from space. When I sourced this graphic, this is something that UX professionals will appreciate. This is what I found, and we're not able, unfortunately, to do a live screen share, so I can't show you how animated this screen is. But this is a real website. This is not fake news. This is the Daily Mail out of UK, and you have a pop-up here, you have a pop-up with video there, you have banner ads. The actual news, which is important, is just getting buried within all of these other data streams, and again, the effect is just overload. It's not a good user experience. So at best, we may feel like we're trying to drink from a fire hose out of a straw. That's kind of the best case scenario, is where there's just too much data and we don't know how to access all of it, and we're overwhelmed. The worst case scenario is we just kind of want to cry into our coffee because there's so much bad news and we feel so powerless to act or to change any of it, and yet we're constantly confronted with all of this negative information. That, for me, that's kind of been the story of 2020 so far. I don't know about the rest of you, but I suspect it may be a common theme. Actionable data is different because it's about moving from individual isolation to collective empowerment. It's basically taking what is unique and special and powerful about the internet and digital information, which is many-to-many communications, and harnessing that in some new ways so that rather than simply being inundated with information, we as individuals have ways to act and ways to respond at the same time that we're being asked to process all of these facts. So actionable data, there are many ways to apply it. And by the way, I say both data and data. I hope that doesn't bug any of you. That's just something I do. But it's an interesting paradigm because it can be applied at many levels. It can be very specific as an approach, but it doesn't have to be all that technical. It's not something where you need to spend $1 million and hire a crack team of programmers to get it to work. This is something that most of you could probably hack together on your phones if you had a compelling use case. So to go forward, what is actionable data? Tool set and a way of thinking, high-tech and low-tech applications. Actionable data, I think this is really important. It's powerful because it generates a story. It generates a data narrative, and that narrative is both ongoing and participatory. And it's important to just understand that what you are putting in front of people it's going to be dynamic, it's going to be new to them, but it's also going to give them choices. That's why it's empowering. And so just to unpack a little bit more before we go and look at some examples, which is, for me at least, always the fun part, just ask the question of what is data? Data, from this definition, which is from Merriam-Webster, is a subset of information. Information can be anything. It can be the gossip. It can be what you hear from a friend, something you read in a book. Data is usually described as factual information that can be used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or calculation. We're going to add to those three terms a fourth, which is taking action. And more than that, data is information in digital form that can be transmitted or processed. So this is really key because once information is digitized and once it kind of goes into an information system, you can do some very exciting things with it, and it acquires some unique qualities. And again, the challenge can be sort of once information becomes data, how do you then take that data and put it back into the real world and the world where it's actually guiding people's decisions and giving them better tools to live their lives? And just in general feel more equipped and more hopeful and positive about the future. These are some of our goals. Going forward, I should talk a little bit about what actionable data is not. It is not cherry picking. So all of you, I'm sure, have had a situation where you've had to put together an annual report or a newsletter, and you've had to sort of, find a good factoid or a good statistic that really makes your points. And maybe you put this in very big letters and you say, did you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's a great rhetorical device. It's very convincing if you can find the right statistic or the right story to make your point. Actionable data is a little bit different because it's not picking and choosing for that one bit of information. Rather, it's structuring a data story, a data narrative in such a way that you will have lots of data that supports your point and supports your goals and the goals of your users. The other thing that actionable data is not is a dashboard. Dashboards are great. I'm actually working on designing one right now for a different project, but they're designed for a different purpose. A dashboard is more typically something that is used by an executive decision maker where it's very hierarchical in its ways. It's kind of like, we take all of this data from all of these different sources, we funnel it to you, you can see the graphs, you can see the charts, and you are the lone arbiter who then takes this and you decide, well, I've got to schedule a meeting with Joey in marketing next week, or we need to do a new sales call, or reach out to our donors. A dashboard is a powerful tool. They're not going away anytime soon, but in general, they involve an interaction where a lot of data is being presented to a single decision maker, and then the decision maker is kind of free to do what they want with it, or perhaps just kind of move on and do nothing. They can work in various ways. Actionable data is just a little bit different because it's setting up a many-to-many paradigm. I think that's the clearest way to describe it. It's presuming that many people will be interacting with the same data set at one time versus if you have a dashboard, say for your sales data, maybe your entire sales team or your executive team will look at that, but it will be a smaller group typically. So actionable data works best when data sets possess any of the three qualities. If they're dynamic, that is to say, if the data is being constantly and regularly updated, if data is user-generated, and if data is not easily countable. And we'll get more into what each of these means, but again, they don't have to have all three qualities. It's a great tool if you can get to at least one of these three. That's when they'll be most useful for you. So a good example of dynamic actionable data is simply the stock market and stock quotes and any type of charting or quoting software. This is how our financial system works. This isn't really a fringe thing. This is kind of what keeps everything going. And it's basic. The stock market would be a system where share prices for securities are updated in real time, and buyers and sellers of stocks can see that information again in real time. Some are people, some are individuals, some are day traders, some are very large firms, some are AIs and computer systems, and simply based on the information that's in front of them and based on changing market conditions, they can make further decisions. So that's a great example of when you have a very large set of data and you have a very large pool of users, and they're all interacting in real time, and it's just kind of a soup. And that's what makes it interesting. Is there are so many actors and there are so many data points, and that's why nobody, as much as they try, can ever completely crack the market. Is because it becomes such a complex system. So, and we'll get back to the social change angle, I promise. But this is just that's the best example I can think of actionable data. Another tool that I ran across recently was a tool for event planning in the age of coronavirus. It basically lets you choose where you are in the country and then choose a certain number of people that you expect to be at your event. It could be 100, it could be 10 or 5. And then it tells you what the risk is that one or more guests at your event would have coronavirus. So this is a very powerful tool. I have used it myself, and it's guided some of my decision making. And it's exactly what it says. And again, it's not sort of data in a vacuum. It's something that you really can use to make real decisions if you're planning a get together or if you're planning travel. Similar to this, I think I mentioned we're lucky we've gone from hazardous air quality to simply very unhealthy air quality in Portland, Oregon, where I'm based. There's still a thick pall of smoke everywhere, and if I sound a little bit congested, that's probably why. But we do have some great tools for actually keeping on top of what has been happening with the fires in this last week. There are a lot of different fire and smoke maps out there. Some have satellite imagery, some are more abstracted. What I like about this one is that in addition to showing you the icons for air quality and fires and in relation to towns throughout the United States, you can zoom in or zoom out. It actually checks your location based on GPS and will issue special instructions. So, for example, special smoke statement. We have the smoke outlook for Willamette Valley, which is where I am. And it just gives you directions for what you should do and not do based on the current conditions. And it has this nice little checklist that tells you what you should do in the very unhealthy and the hazardous codes, which is, so today I know that everyone should avoid prolonged or heavy exertion. I guess no jogging, no cycling for me, maybe some gentle yoga. We'll see. But that's a very, it may seem obvious, it may not seem all that exciting, but just taking things from the step of, oh my God, we have all this information, what are we going to do with it, to the step of, we have all this information, it's being updated in real time, and we have specific instructions and actions that people can take. It gives back a lot of control over your reality, and it just helps people to have some kind of sense of security in really difficult times. And I can say that in this week when I have a go bag packed in case we need to evacuate, I can say that from the first person. So the second quality of actionable data is that it works really well for systems which are user-generated. This is a great system for fundraising. If you've seen any Kickstarters or any crowdfunding campaigns which let you unlock specific goals based on how much funds are raised by everybody involved. It's also been used very effectively in political fundraising. And again, we're talking about rewards based on collective actions, not on individual actions. So we're not saying that if you give $20,000, the book will include 20 additional comics. We're saying that if everybody all together pitches in and raises $20,000, that's when these bonus goals come into effect. Howard Dean actually was probably the first person to really put user-generated actionable data to work, and it's kind of what propelled him to fame and just made a big change in the way that online fundraising was done. So again, when people can see the consequences of their actions and see in real time that they're not alone, but they're connected with others, having similar goals, it tends to just really magnify the effect. Matching grants are another great example of it, but in a large system, users can become their own matching grants, and you get more momentum. You get people who they see that the goal has been met at one level, and then they come back and they give a second time to reach stretch goals. It's powerful. This is not all user-generated content. It's not only for fundraising. There are a lot of just creative and innovative and cool ways that you can use things such as photos, things such as hashtags, any information that users care to share that can just become part of a data narrative. Something that I have always wanted to do is just create a system where people can upload photos of themselves eating a vegetarian meal in real time, and translate that into the carbon footprint for the planet. Or upload, just say like, hey, I didn't drive to work on this day. That would be another great example of user-generated content. Hopefully, we or somebody will get to do something like that soon. But really, the sky is the limit. If you can define it as a set of variables for a computer program, it can become data. And then the third example, and this is probably the lowest tech of the three, is just when data is not easily countable. Humans genetically have the ability to count up to 5, typically. If we see 5 items in front of us, we can count that. More than that, we get confused. This is a photo from Rain Man. Some of you may recognize it. The protagonist in Rain Man, you may remember, is an autistic man who has some special abilities. One is the ability to count up all of these toothpicks. There are 246 in the picture, by the way. And the way to sort of think about this, if you're building a data system, is think about a spreadsheet, and think about scrolling through a spreadsheet and how a lot of data that may be interesting or useful, maybe it's locations or other organizations that you're allied with, can just get lost along the way. That's what we want to avoid having happen. So that's why, again, a system which takes a large data set, even if it's static, even if it is just entries in a list, and presents it in different way, can then be very powerful if you add that magic ingredient of a call to action. So, further examples, we've gone through some of these: stock trading, health updates, weather updates, fundraising, peak electricity and utility monitoring, traffic signs, and customer service. You could almost think of anything that you're doing. Say you're running a restaurant, and you are using an online program which collects customer feedback, good and bad. All of that goes to your email address as manager. Well, guess what? It's not that difficult to create a filter which then passes this information along to employees just as a series of texts. And you can still have insight and oversight and decide what gets passed along. But suddenly everybody on your team has access not just to knowing when things went wrong, when customers were upset, but also to what went well and what went best. So and oftentimes those good stories are what get lost. So that's an example of how you really just could, with existing tools, very low tech, hook up an actionable data system for your own organization and see immediate results. Another example and a good way to think about this are just people in traffic. Lots of people stuck on the same road. There's a big electronic sign which has a real-time update or warning with information. And so people adapt to that. And whether you're talking about a blizzard warning or whether you're talking about a lizard warning, you want to know the latest information, so you as a driver can take action and make decisions and stay on the road or go somewhere else. But it's that goal of just getting the same information in front of many actors who then will all take their own decision-making paths. And so from there, we come back to the giving map. Again, I really encourage all of you to take a moment to just go through the site on your own. It loads quickly. It doesn't install any cookies or anything that would be objectionable or compromise your privacy. It's very simple, and it's basically just a way to present county by county COVID-19 data that's updated once per day from the Johns Hopkins University data share, and combine that with a call to action. So we have these Give Now buttons, and then when you click on the Give Now buttons, you get a series of different categories for charity donations that you can make. They include hospitals, primary care, mental health, food insecurity like food pantries, shelter insecurity, parks and forests. The goal is really to give people as much choice as possible, but also give them some context and some sense of where things are bad, knowing that COVID-19 has a big economic impact, as well as just the immediate health crisis. So when you click on any of these categories, this takes you through to our partner who handles electronic transactions, and that is Charity Navigator. They're the biggest charity evaluator in the world, and they do all the e-commerce, so we don't have to. But that's where the navigation flow will land you. And I would say that about 10% of our users use the How You Can Help button. The rest are simply checking out the map to get information. This is a very good ratio as far as we're concerned for conversion, because the people who are using it just for information are gathering a lot of, we know from how long they're staying on the site that they're actually engaging. And that's valuable data also. It's, hopefully helping them make better, safer decisions in their own lives. So we know some people are going through and having the intention to make donations, but it doesn't have to be everyone. Simply having that option can, as part of what you're presented with, can be very powerful. So to wrap it up, because I know we're running low on time, actionable data, it's valuable as a framework. The pros are really that it empowers by giving people calls to action with context. It's fresh. It can generate a new story every single day. There's a richness to the content that you don't get when you have something that's simply curated or put together by a staffer or an intern. And it's sticky. We've really been surprised and pleased by how many repeat users we have who just like to come back and see this day to day, again, because the data is fresh and updated regularly. The cons, the only significant roadblocks, you do have to have some kind of access to data. So there are a lot of great sources out there that are available from the U.S. government, from worldwide sources. Kaggle is a great place to look for data sets. The best, of course, is if you're able to generate and release your own data, but that can be just one thing really to think about as you structure a data narrative. The other thing to be aware of is that actionable data works best when you have some degree of scale. If you don't have a large online user base, consider partnering or consider collaborating. with other organizations. Again, none of this has to be super high tech. If you have a big spreadsheet with a lot of public locations or websites for partners or relevant organizations, that in itself can be a starting point. But it works best when you can get beyond the cherry picking phase and get to the point where you have more toothpicks than you can count to reprise. And I will say our next step that we envision, we're thinking about work that we can do with climate change right now, building a climate map, and also building a justice map, which would allow people who are interested in supporting Black, disabled, Indigenous, and people of color organizations, and also, very importantly, organizations focused on anti-poverty work all over the United States, to just have an easy way to interface and define those groups. If you fit into any of these categories, or if you know people who do, get in touch with us. We can't do this alone. We would love to build this. We need your buy-in. So I'll end with that as a call to action. And just one more, I challenge anyone who's listening to this as a decision maker, think about how you might be able to integrate the principles of actionable data with your organization. Think about what a data story might look at for you. Could be fun. So now,
Great.
questions.
Thank you so
Again,
much.
sorry we ran over. Yeah.
That's okay. That's all right. It was actually interesting to see the new information about the fires in terms of that data and those data sets. I mean, I know that it's been kind of top of mind for people, or it's directly impacting people. And so we have time now for questions from the audience. Feel free to put those questions into the question tab. And I also opened up the poll. So if you are interested in learning more about actionable data, we're curious what type of usage you would put that to. Is it fundraising, recruiting volunteers, connecting with other organizations, news and outreach, or for supporting your mission goals? So we do have a couple of questions here. One of the questions is, how can I apply the principles of actionable data within my own organization?
And I would say that, again, a really good place to start with applying the principles of actionable data is just to sit. If you have a whiteboard, or if you have a way to just start to draw out some of the relationships and some of the sources of data, think about the data story. Think about what sources of data you have access to, who your core users are, what their core problems are, and if there is a friction point, if there's a point where you do have a lot of data that may be relevant, think about how you can integrate that next step. And it can be more than just, as marketers, as interaction design professionals, we're always taught to include calls to action, include big sticky buttons. The ideal is really getting to the point where those calls to action can be tailored to the content itself. And just become a little bit more detailed. So it's an ongoing experience, but I think it really starts with just looking at the data that you have available to you already, or the data you might want to have available, and then figuring out what interactions could be structured in a way that your clients or your users have more choice and are more empowered.
So our next question here sounds like it's a little bit related. Is there a difference for how you would present or position actionable data internally in an organization versus externally?
I would say that it really is going to be most useful as an external tool unless you have a very large organization, or unless you have a very large and constant stream of data coming in. For instance, the restaurant example. One thing that's really important to know, sometimes it can be very scary to engage with data that is coming at you in real time. You have the experience of, oh, you've let the genie out of the bottle. For internal and for external data, you do want to make sure you kind of have checks and balances, and you have a system in place to screen the data and know, have some sense of the range that it's going to look like and to resemble. So I would say probably that those checks and balances and those screening mechanisms that you build in are going to be the biggest difference between internal and external actionable data.
Okay, and next question is, what's the difference between actionable data and a standard call to action in an email or on a website?
I would say that for that, again, it really gets down to the granularity and the specificity of the information. If you are somebody and if it's just an option to set up a sales chat or to give, versus if you're able to give, say, to a specific family or a specific project, the more you can drill down and get to the level of specific content that's really customized for who you are or where you are. In the fires example, for instance, rather than saying like these are just general guidelines for fires everywhere, information that's really customized to somebody's location, somebody's attributes as a user, or to use information they've already requested. That's the difference with actionable data. Is it's just taking that call to action and making it just a little bit more specific and more tailored to the user's needs.
Great. So any last tips for our audience members who are looking to use actionable data in their projects? I would say that it really should begin with kind of the methodology of design thinking, which is all about a problem to solve. It's very cool as a shiny tool, but the time to really be employing this is when you have a core mission or you have a core need, and you're looking for a better way to engage. So, for instance, with the giving map, our core issue was just we felt like people were very powerless and very disengaged and just kind of freaked out and depressed by everything that was happening with coronavirus. So rather than just try to create something that was only a feel-good experience, we wanted to give people a way to interact and have direct impact. So I guess those, to sort of break it down just into the questions I would ask yourself, it would be number one, what is the core problem that we're trying to solve? And number two, how can our users affect change? What tools can we give our users to affect change? Off the cuff, that's what I'd say. Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tess, for joining us today. And to you also at home, Don't forget to leave us feedback. Tell us what you think, and have a good day using your actionable data.
Thanks. Thanks, Bobby.